I am about 7 months into my first job after graduating college last spring, and I've been tracking my spending for a while now. And I found that on average, I save about 70% of my income. This is the money I save from my post-tax income, in addition to my 401k contribution that gets automatically deducted from my paycheck every month. Now, when it comes to saving money, I get it can be hard to save, especially when you're fresh out of college, you start receiving your first paychecks. It can be tempting to go out and buy the things you've always dreamed of buying, things you can finally afford, and go out and just enjoy life. But if you've noticed yourself overspending, want to save more money, or start budgeting, this is the video for you. Because in this video, I'll be sharing the exact strategies and principles that I follow to be able to save a large majority of my income. So there's this quote that goes, "What gets measured gets managed," or "What gets measured gets improved." If you think about any dieting plan or training plan, they always tell you to track the amount of calories you eat or track how many miles you run. Because if you track your progress, you'll be naturally gravitated towards improving those figures. And the same goes with personal finance. It seems like the obvious thing to do, but I know how hard it can be to build this habit. Trust me, I've been there. I've gone through so many attempts over the years to try to budget and start tracking my spending. It started off as just me telling myself to try to spend as little money as possible, which was a terrible strategy because it wasn't a strategy. Every time I would want to buy something, I would just justify it somehow, like telling myself, okay, I'll buy this now, but next month I'll spend less. Or if it was a small purchase, I would say, okay, this is not gonna make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. It's just gonna be a drop in the bucket. And at the end of the month, maybe you've been through this as well, I would check my credit card bill and I would be shocked because it would be way more than I anticipated. And I would always ask myself, how in the world did I spend this much? And then after this, I would try to create a budget. But I would get overly ambitious and just put the bare minimum amount for every category. But inevitably, my friends would hit me up to go grab some food or to do something, and I would oblige, again, using sort of justification. And every month, I would always end up over budget. So that's why I would recommend to just start tracking your spending for the first few months, just to be able to get an idea of what your spending looks like on a typical month. And you'll be able to see what categories of spending that you can cut back on and what areas that you just can't really afford to save any more money in. So how do I track my spending? It took some time to find a viable strategy for me, something that was both effective and practical as a not very time consuming. I know some people like to use an app like Mint, but I found that by linking your bank account, it doesn't take into account things like Venmo. And sometimes it can overinflate or underestimate your spending if you're paying things through Venmo. So what I've been doing personally is I just take 15 minutes at the end of each month and I open up my bank statement and just record each line item transaction into an Excel spreadsheet. This way I can spot things like if I covered a bill, I can adjust that transaction accordingly as to not overestimate my spending. And I'll give a quick example as to what I do now. So this is basically what I use to track my spending every month. It's pretty simple. Again, the idea is to have as little inputs as possible so I can get this all done in 10-15 minutes. On the left here, I have each transaction, how much it cost, and then the category. On the right here, it's a general list of the categories, how much the budget is, and then the actual amount I actually spent that month. So I just want to show you a few tricks you can do to make this process of tracking each transaction a lot quicker. So what you can actually do is you can create a drop-down menu for each of these cells. And the way to do that is you highlight the column, go to data validation. Now since you already highlighted the column, the cell range here will be automatically filled in. So you just have to choose the criteria or the data range for the criteria, which will be your set of categories. And then you want to make sure this is checked, show drop-down list and cell. And once you have that, you'll see that every single cell, every single line item here will have a drop-down menu in which you can automatically just input what category it is instead of having to manually type it. What I would do is I would go in every month, type in my transactions. Around would be 1100. So you get the point. This is just a list of some sample transactions. And then here what you can do is you can just do a simple sum if statement, summing up all the costs. Drag that down. So you can see it tallies up all the times you've spent money in that category on the right here. That way you can actually track how much money you spend in that particular month. And just repeat this for each month. Name this to May, wipe all the transactions and just start over. And you can also add a sheet for perhaps the end of the year. If you want to tally up the total amount of money you spent in each category, and you can just sum each of the month end totals for each category. I only have April, May here, but you get the point. So it'll tally it up for each year. So I hope this kind of helps you get a sense of what you can do for your budget. You can customize it to your liking. You can find more ways to slice and dice your spending. For me, I want to keep it simple. I just want to know which categories I'm spending the most money in. As you can see, I don't have the date of the transactions because I don't really care when I spent them. I just know I spent them during that month. To save you guys some time, I can put a link to this template in the description of this video so you can just download it for yourself. You can just make a copy of this template and just put it in your own Google Drive. But yeah, back to the video. So this method I found to not be too time consuming because I only have to do it once every month. And it also allows me to be very conscious of what I'm spending because I'm examining every transaction. So from this point on, tracking your spending will allow you to make conscious adjustments to actively curb your spending instead of just telling yourself that I'm going to try to spend less money next month. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is just as important, if not more important, in my opinion, than tracking your spending. And that is to have the right mindset when it comes to saving. Back in college, I was a terrible saver because I really had no reason to save. I would buy shoes, alcohol, video games. It was food and alcohol mainly, but now I have very little desire to buy anything. And the difference was I found a reason to save. After my sophomore year of college, I was put into a situation where I was forced to be out on my own without any financial support from my parents, and suddenly I had to rely entirely on myself to sustain a living. And after working several minimum wage jobs that I didn't particularly like and reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I over time developed the mentality that financial freedom was my goal. And you don't even really need to put the word financial in front of it. My goal is just simply freedom. Freedom to do whatever it is I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, whether it's to start my own business, travel, pursue my passion for filmmaking, music, whatever. And I set the goal of not necessarily retiring by 30, but having the option to quit my job if I wanted to. Now, luckily, I do like my 9-to-5 job, and I do plan to further my career in the finance industry, but I just want the option to choose at age 30. I want to have complete control of my life and not have to stay at a job just to make ends meet when I know my heart is calling me to do something else. And I think about this goal every day, and especially before I make purchases. If you don't have that North Star that is guiding you, I think it'll be really difficult to motivate yourself to save. And when I found my North Star, saving money really just became second nature to me. And usually when it comes to considering purchases that will give me short-term gratification, this burning desire to reach my goal far outweighs any short-term desire I have to buy the things that will give me pleasure but not happiness. So I'd encourage you to dig deep and find that reason that inspires you to save. Maybe you want to buy your parents a nice house someday. Maybe you want to travel the world without having to worry about money. Or maybe you just want to detach yourself from a materialistic lifestyle. That underlying reason will be your source of strength that will stop you the next time you're considering a purchase that might be more of an impulse buy. Now, this is not to say don't buy anything, be a hermit, and just stay inside and work. That is the fastest way to burn yourself out and to dim your North Star. My advice here for living a relatively frugal lifestyle while still being able to enjoy life is twofold. The first thing would be to use your money to buy experiences instead of things. This is probably the biggest way for me to stay at a consistent level of happiness while not breaking the bank. And my main expenditures now have been mainly from hanging out with friends or my girlfriend and trying new things and traveling. With buying experiences, not only do you create memories that you can look back fondly upon, you also broaden your knowledge and understanding of people, culture, and generally how the world works. Especially when you go to a new place and you put yourself outside of your comfort zone, there is incredible growth that occurs when you find yourself in an unfamiliar environment and you learn to adapt. Experiences provide a lot of value long after they've occurred. The pursuit of buying material goods, on the other hand, usually doesn't provide a lot of long-term benefits and is an urge that is very difficult to stop once it starts gaining momentum. It starts off by seeing an item you like, whether it's clothes, video games, jewelry. You get really excited to buy it, you come up with a reason to buy it. I've been working really hard lately, I deserve to treat myself. Then you buy it, and it's really fun and enjoyable for about a week. Okay, maybe it takes a bit more than a week, but eventually you get bored of it, and then you move on to the next thing that will bring you gratification. And this cycle repeats. So I'd say really be honest with yourself and examine the real reason for buying something. Is it to make yourself feel better, to look better, to seek admiration or validation? Now, if you're looking to buy something like jewelry or a car or something that has a lot of meaning to you and you premeditated the decision for a long time, then I would say by all means, go for it. But 9 times out of 10, at least for me, things that I've wanted to buy were simply for my short-term gratification or pleasure. And my reasons for buying them have been very superficial and for some sort of external reason instead of what is best for me. I would be hitting every single sale at Foot Locker. To this day, there are still boxes in my closet of shoes that I've not opened yet and not worn once. Now, my second piece of advice is to seek moderation in how much time you're spending for leisure and for fun and what you do for fun. Personally, I reserve time for enjoyment like hanging out with friends or eating out for the weekend exclusively. And even then, I try to use my weekends as productively as possible. I still go to the gym, I film some YouTube videos, and I totally understand the mentality of we're only young once, and I don't just want to live for the weekends. But the fact that we only live through our 20s once is exactly why I feel like I cannot spend all my free time just having fun and spending money. Because I believe that this 10-year period of our lives is an incredibly crucial one, and it is one of our greatest opportunities to either make really good use of our time and money or to squander it. Not only will investments yield a much larger return by investing earlier in our 20s, this is also the period in our lives in which we have the most amount of energy and the least amount of obligations. So I'm really trying to seize this opportunity to take new risks and to try new things while I'm still this young, because I know I'll never have an opportunity like this again. Things just become different once you're in your 30s. You start to consider having a family and you just have a lot more responsibilities overall. So knowing this, I'm trying to invest as much money as I possibly can right now and to try to use a majority of my time productively. Now, when it comes to moderating the cost of leisure or having fun, I've learned that the people are usually more important than the destination or place you're going to. My fondest memories from this past year have been just from hanging with friends at our apartments or our homes, going out to eat at all-you-can-eat places. My friends and I went on a road trip this past summer in which we just stayed at Airbnbs along the way and some hotels, but nothing too fancy. Meanwhile, that overpriced meal at a fancy restaurant, I can hardly remember what it tasted like. I've just learned that anything can be fun if you have the right company. You don't always have to be splashing out on the most extravagant experiences, especially when you're young and money is a lot harder to come by. Now, I'm not saying not to enjoy the finer things in life, but definitely do it very scarcely. Leave it for the special occasions. And just know that, at least from my experiences, all those luxury, extravagant experiences or goods that you see posted all over social media and whatnot are not always as enjoyable as they're hyped up to be. Alright, so that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I'll be responding to every single one of them. And if you enjoyed this video and or found it helpful, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to stick around and see more content. And I hope to see you next time. Peace.